Welcome to What's Your Sign? I'm Julia Loken.
I'm Stevie Goldstein.
And I'm the Essenza of this podcast.
George Essenza?
Essenza. It's as you guys know, this is a sparkling water podcast that sometimes we talk about astrology.
Yeah.
Yeah, here and there.
Yeah.
Water.
It's the San Pellegrino LaCroix.
Oh, the cans.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
I was like, I know I've seen this word.
It's the best.
Well, Essenza. Oh yeah, this one's good.
It's the tangerine strawberry flavor for me.
Ooh.
Yeah. It's so good. I can't stop drinking it.
So this is not a sparkling water per se. Not even per se. I don't think it is. I had my first Celsius over the last week working on set, working on the short film. Went amazing. Deep into Celsius. That shit is like a party drug. Like you can really create regrets on this drink. Like everyone was like talking about the Celsius, dude. Like, have you had Celsius today? Like, it's really good. I haven't had it before. Like, just hearing that like mollied up conversation around Celsius. Have you partooketh?
Yeah.
I like the taste too.
I'm really not going to water for caffeine. I'm really not going to energy drink. I feel like for the most part for me, I have had it like sometimes before work or whatever. I think I like prefer yerba mate.
Yes.
Or coffee. But it is like I feel like if you're like late night, maybe I would want like a Celsius rather than coffee because coffee gives you like some more stomachy stuff, I feel like.
I do feel like Celsius is like a quote unquote healthier energy drink alternative, but I agree. I'm not an energy drink person. I don't usually feel them, to be honest. And it's not like I can go to bed. I don't know if it's an ADD thing where it's like the stimulant ends up leveling me off, but it's not like the right kind of stimulant. The only kind of energy drink I have felt and has been consistent for me are those like 5-hour energy, like the shots.
Oh yeah, those are insane.
Yeah, but like that's insane, and like you can't do that all of the time. And I also remember another one that hit was Redline. Do you remember Redline when it was like everyone was like, "Don't do Redline. It's like cocaine." So I have a friend were like, "We got to get Redline.
Get Redline tonight."
I have a friend who drinks those the Sour Patch Kids energy drink and loves them. I like a good yerba. I also recently encountered at Target cherry cola caffeinated flavored sparkling water, and I just feel like we're at a point now where we're making soda again.
Yeah.
make America soda again. I don't know. I'm like, what is happening that you can't just have a diet cherry Coke? Like, this is not making sense to me. And I don't know. I'm not going for caffeinated sparkling water either, but I don't know. I am drinking San Pellegrino's like in my retainer in the middle of the night when I wake up. So I'm probably not the most trusted source, but yeah, I don't know.
I think Celsius is just, and I know I'm late to the party. It feels like how Four Loko was getting away with something for a while. Like I do think it's gonna get clocked it's only a matter of time because everyone was saying like normally a coffee has like mg. This has 2 G's of caffeine. It was like, oh, this is quite a lot. And there's something in the herbal tea that is also awakening something, but it was like a clean awakeness, which I was into, but it was like party responsibly. Also on the Sour Patch alert, the Sour Patch strawberries are my new
those are good.
Just my new thing, just my new addiction. I'm very deep now into sour candies, which was not me before. Living with a candy boy, probably
I'm a candy. I've got some Rex for you. I got a list of stuff to send you.
Summer snack season. This is what. So yeah, Celsius cut the check. Senza cut the check. Oh my god, can you imagine Sour Patch?
Sour Patch?
Oh my god, I would die. I would
advertise,
be so happy.
Honey. Okay, Venus. Maybe this will be late news. Actually, I don't think so by the times this post, but y'all, the Jonah Hill, Keke Palmer, bad boys cancellation. Like I felt like the news was just being so Venus retrograde shadowy leading up to this, and everyone's like, I'm getting so many like breakup texts, like we're talking about taking a break or doing this, and I'm just putting that out there. Thoughts of if the Venus retrograde shadow has been percolating or obvious to either of you.
For sure. I think I mean, in the housewives realm, the Kyle and Mauricio stuff.
Oh, I've seen those images of the split hearts of like the people.
Yeah, and like they're still together, but they're separated. And I think like probably when we're getting this kind of news, it means show will be airing soonish. And so maybe during the retrograde, we might have like a little bit more of a glimpse into what's actually happening between them. But yeah, I think that's interesting. And I do think that is kind of following your heart in a way where if it is a retrograde time and it's like, okay, we're not like divorcing, but we are experimenting with maybe not living together or not I don't know what, I don't want to like put words in what they're actually doing because I don't know, but maybe they're experimenting with different things in their relationship.
Or at the very least, acknowledging that they are going through a tough phase in their relationship. And that is also part of, I don't know, the Venus retrograde cycle for sure. Also something that I think is maybe not the typical media display where we're used to people wanting to put their best foot forward. And this is my relationship that's perfect with no problems. Saying actually we're going through a rough patch and like we're not getting divorced, but also like we're tired of the speculation about why we haven't posted pictures together because we're going through it. And maybe that will still lead to divorce. Maybe this is a soft launch of a thing, who knows?
Or maybe it's the ploy to,
separation
stay on TV and
exactly.
like figure, that's the whole thing too. So
it also made me think of on the astrology podcast about Venus retrograde, which everyone should listen to. It's very long, but very thorough. But they talked a lot about Venus representing consensus. And I do think that there is something about, at the very least in the Bravo verse, we have seen that having a relationship drama be the kind of lead into a season of television is now like consensus popular. Let's do that. Not saying that they're doing it for the show, because obviously, I've watched some TikToks and it looks like there's evidence that this has been happening naturally prior to this based on posts and such. But it just made me think of that of like, oh, we do as a consenting group also like to know this kind of stuff. And this is what we are interested in for people. This is the kind of drama that we like. And
that's so interesting to me because I never really thought of that, like applying it into the Bravo universe. But like on Watch What Happens Live, he does live polls that are basically like, what do people feel about, like, who do you like better? Whose side are you on? Like, what do you think is? I'm sure that would or will be one as like, what do you think? Do you think Kyle and Mauricio are really together? Like those kind of things.
And I did see something that I think this is Leo Venus retrograde to me, where someone was kind of talking about how Mauricio maybe got a little bit too involved in not the show, but that he had his own show, and that it was a little bit too much about Mauricio and like this is the housewives, and that he was maybe getting in a little bit, and that feels very like, no, you're the house husband, and like obviously live your life, make your money. That's like why Kyle is on the show, but you aren't the character. And if you are kind of becoming too much of a character, then we also need to maybe separate a little bit. And that's not like the space either for Kyle or for the show itself.
Also, I think they're politically different. And I think that can be really something that's really testing during this, especially talking about Venus being values and those things. And I don't know that they're that far different, but like if you look, you can kind of see, I think he follows some more Trumpier stuff. I'm sure that she leans conservative, but probably not that far. you know.
Well, and speaking of consensus, you can't be, if you're going to be a woman in the public eye at this point too. I mean, it's hard to be,
especially in a LA show, like, you know, that whole thing. And I think like Rinna, I think, called them out for, you know, certain candidates they've supported in the past. I don't want to like get too political, but certain local candidates that that the other women have supported and stuff. So I do think it comes up.
Well, that just happened even with Guy Fieri. Everyone's like, oh my God, he's like hanging out with Trump at this thing. It's like, yeah, it's like, what do you think he was maybe into? Like, what is this? Is that does this change your feelings on him? And also, congratulations to Vanderpump on their first Emmy nomination.
I know. Oh, wow. Amazing. So cool.
Wow.
And the Housewives have never been nominated.
The consensuses are real. And I think with the Jonah Hill thing, which is interesting, and I feel like this new wave of cancellation, and also we're recording this on July 12th. Maybe other news has come out. Here's a timestamp for you. But this motherfucker did not like surfing until this girl like took her whole style, all that stuff. And I just like love her being like, it's not so much as like, oh, cancel this person. It's like, it feels very relatable to any text women would send, which is like, hey, I think you guys should know, like, this is what this dude is like, by the way. It's nothing is technically illegal or full.
Oh, there's other stuff that came out, I think, yesterday. But which is, again, probably just, I mean, maybe illegal, but not, I don't think the person pressed charges or, you know, again, something happened at a party. I don't want to like, it's pretty triggering. Right. So you can check it out. And I also don't like, wasn't fact checking sources either. So I don't really know. It was a Twitter thing I saw.
Remember, this is a sparkling water podcast, so we don't know all the full details, but
yeah,
we're not prying.
And like you're saying, once we have a pattern of behavior established that it's like, hey, this guy is clearly like a douche or whatever, then other people are going to be like, oh, you know what? Actually, he did something to me that was kind of fucked up too.
Yeah. It opens the permission, which it should.
Well, and I think sometimes with stuff like that, you don't know, especially, and this is a very Venus, you know, women's issues kinds of things too. You don't know, is this just me? Was this a vibe I got? Am I misreading this? Am I overthinking this? But when someone else goes, no, this was my experience, and you go, okay, yeah, then this is him. That's what they were doing. This is a pattern of behavior. I can say this is my thing because now I know it wasn't just me. I didn't misread the situation. This was fucked up. I think it's
Cancer moon men just
and women too.
I
thought it was fun.
I think that it's interesting too in kind of Leo, this like self-presentation of you know, are you actually confident or are you controlling and domineering and can't kind of handle that sort of thing? Because I think that's really, you know, not to say that any other behavior is like, not to condone any of it, but I think what it comes down to, a lot of it is just him being like, you can't be like a out there autonomous person because I'm insecure about that. I think is like the boiling down to all of these things.
I think it also speaks to this, and this wasn't said either, but it speaks to this kind of thing of like I do think there is like, I don't know how to say this without sounding problematic, because I do think you can take like not consent to something after it's happened. I do think that's a thing. I'm not saying that you can't, you know, back away from something or realize that something was not okay later. But I do feel like for the kind of control that he's exacting on her, again, it wasn't said explicitly this, but it does feel like no matter what you do, I'm going to say later that I wasn't okay with it. Like, no matter what swimsuit you're wearing, I'm going to have a problem with the fabric or later. Yes. It's like that kind of thing that builds and builds and builds and becomes more and more controlling. And I just feel like that kind of thing, it speaks to like, I don't know, like first stage kind of that stuff.
Sure.
Well,
absolutely.
It's all very loaded. Yeah, I'm sure I'll say something that's not 100% correct in this, but like, his whole thing of like, don't comment on my body, which I think are all great, valid things that he said. But then when this has been the behind the scenes, you're like, wait, dude, what? Like,
yeah,
you're so tapped into this realm. And of course, like, because now his therapy documentary brings in a whole new slew of ethics questions and all of that. But I'm glad it brought up the combo on boundaries and what they are and what they aren't. And good Lord, also just some of these pictures, I'm like, I just like loser vibe. Like, just let this hot woman surf. My God. But and then Keke Palmer's is just like, why is your man telling you you're dressed like a slut on your on your socials? The Leo drama, it's very present.
Well,
and
I think attention, but also who people are. I don't want to say authentic self, because again, I don't like that phrase as like a thing, but I think that someone else brought it up too, of the thing where it's like, this is the thing that attracted to you in the first place about this person, and what you thought was that they would stop being that person once you got them, and they would only be that person for you, instead of continuing to be that person who they already are publicly and have been.
I also think that, and again, this is unsaid stuff. This isn't like, there's no document of this, but it speaks to a kind of man. Being a woman in a swimsuit is something of itself. You have to like the way you look in a swimsuit. You don't have to, but like for the most part, women spend a great majority of time finding those things that make them feel comfortable to not be wearing so much clothing. Same with like a hot Vegas outfit on your Instagram. Like, this is a man trying to, when you know that you're feeling yourself, trying to be like, nah, you're not good enough, you're not this, or like, this makes me uncomfortable. And it's like, no, you know what makes you uncomfortable is that I'm confident. It doesn't have anything to do with the color of the thing, how much skin I'm showing, whatever. What you don't like is the fact that I seem like I'm doing all right. And it like, I think, and again, it's like, maybe I'm reading into that because of stuff in my life that's happened to me, but I do feel like it's like, it is a big risk sometimes posting like a thing, outfit you really like on social media that's like a little risque. That it can be really risky. And of course, a bunch of people are going to tell you don't look good. You know, guys are going to say that on anything.
Oh, so yeah. Well, they want to fuck you until you say no, and then all of a sudden you're fat and ugly. And
exactly.
It's like, what? Oh, okay.
Well, they still want to fuck you. They just want to tell you that you're fat and ugly, so you'll feel bad enough to fuck them. Is what they think, but
it's like, oh, gee whiz, I guess he's right. I guess I'll hop on this ass dick. Fuck. No, I think that's all so resonating for this, and back to even like, it triggered something in me to back to therapy words. Also, we'll leave the therapy words for maybe therapists. Also, therapists don't even use like so many of these words that came from TikTok of like, he's toxic-y, trauma dumping. It's like, he might just suck.
Yeah.
But I think too, like, just seeing his evolution to become this like Malibu beach bum. I just had this so many times in my life where I'm like, wait, with like ex-friends or ex-lovers, I'm like, their whole style's because of me. Like, I show them all this. Like, so I'm just thinking of even that, like, oh, I trusted you I let you into my world and show you all these things that are amazing. And now you're like, my idea, like, this is my life. Like, I've never heard of it before. I know that that's not as important as what actually transpired, but I think that layer that is gross, you know?
I think that is very Venus retrograde though. And these things of like, if it isn't authentic to you, it will be revealed at some point when you actually have to embody those values. Dressing a certain
playing the
way.
part.
Yes, that's what I mean. Like, it is where it's like, oh, okay, sorry. So you are that insecure nerd guy who's kind of mean and pokes fun at people and actually isn't cool and welcoming. And
this is what Julia said yesterday was, is anyone really acting?
Yes, you're just like,
because it's like, it's every character he plays is like some insecure, like sped up, like you know, dorky, whatever,
simp kind of sad guy that's like trying to be in the cool thing because he doesn't feel cool or whatever. Even thinking about like Super Bad, where it's like, oh, like we were nerds, but he's an asshole about it, and it's like, oh, okay, cool. So that is who you are. And you can put on the surfer clothes, you can try that on, but that suggests a certain mentality, and now we see that you actually don't have that. So then you go, oh, whatever, like, okay, I guess this guy isn't that thing.
Yeah. And just not that astrology, most of the time this is just men and their background and trauma, but I mean, just Capricorn Mercury right on the rising, just like all that like control, like Venus and Saturn and Scorpio together up on the MC. There's just like,
is he
Jupiter conjunct the sun and Sagittarius? Just there's just many things that feel
and Cancer Moon. I think a Sag Sun Cancer Moon is a dangerous individual. Let me tell you,
very dangerous. And super late degree Sag Sun person. There's just a lot that, and Libra Mars on top of this all. So like the conflict squaring Mercury. I think we're not. He's 1983.
Oh wow. Okay,
number 20th.
Not even close. Okay.
Sag Sun, Cancer Moon, Capricorn rising.
I knew he was right on the edge.
Yeah. So just some, it brought up some collective combo that felt very, very fitting. But
I think this is also I think this is also very interesting, because one of the things that I wrote down for Venus retrograde, because on the day before it stations, but we're still in the shadow and it feels very appropriate, we have the release for the Barbie movie, which is so much about women being whatever they want. I know I'm gonna do a little revisionist history here on Barbie, because still problematic in ways, but I think would absolutely represent, and certainly in terms of fashion and jobs and things like that, of women being who they want to be and being kind of
it's like playtime.
Yes.
So there's an imagination aspect to it.
A self-creation. And I do think that this Barbie movie is also going to be a kind of revision of Barbie herself and discussing what that is in reality and all that. I just think I think that's a really that really stood out to me as like a kind of touchstone of this Venus retrograde, of how we're going to be discussing women's value, women's, even in the advertising, when it's like, she's everything, he's just Ken. This feels very Jonah Hill, Keke Palmer IRL in this kind of embodied thing of the like, okay, well, sorry you guys want to date women who are everything. Like, they're everything.
I think it's interesting too, where like, we have this Venus retrograde happening in Leo, and maybe we can get into some of the stats too, but we have and I don't know exactly by a degree, but like squaring off the Jupiter and Taurus right now too, which is also like a women's focus sign. And I think we talked about in our Jupiter and Taurus episode, but like, I think Barbie is a very good example of that square, because it is, it is about women's issues, but it's also like supposed to be fun and for kids. And so a lot of the things that are things that like, the Supreme Court stuff we're fighting, that kind of stuff. It's like, we can't really talk about that kind of stuff with children. We have to wait until they're old enough to understand it. And so it is like planting those seeds in this kind of like square way, where it's like, we want you to be encouraged to think for yourself, to be a Barbie doctor, to have a Barbie dream house, to have this thing, so that you can learn as you grow up, like, that's an option for you, and then get to learn about more of the, deep
how
stuff,
how it actually works. But
I think what's just one last thing on Barbie too. It's what's going to be interesting is Mattel is slated to make 45 new Mattel movies. Like, they're going for the Marvel universe after Barbie. So we've had this like decade plus of like lots of Marvel. It's, it seems to, I think people want something new to like get fandom-y about. So that'd be interesting to see too, like what Venus cycles were also happening and making these like legacy franchise. Of course, Mattel has been a toy company for many years, but now we're about to get, this is just like Barbie feels very like, I don't know, fresh and new. And now it's like, we're going to just get so much Mattel.
Well, I'll go over the stats, but I think that's interesting. Another thing that stood out to me just in general to keep in mind for Venus retrogrades is that when Venus retrogrades happen, it's when Venus is closest to the Earth. And I think that to me says symbolically, we're finding out real things about people's, relationships. It's not the like fantasy, the idealized version, the kind of pretty aesthetic version. This is like, what does this really look like up close? And I think with something like Barbie, she literally is like going from Barbie land to Earth or whatever. And we're like seeing that in there. But I think also in terms of like whatever it is that you are going through in your own experience during this Venus retrograde. And again, we'll go through stats so you can know where to look in your chart and what particular points might be of interest to us throughout this cycle. But I think just thinking of it being, this is the reality of our values, the reality of our aesthetics. What does this take for things to look like this? How is that worth it to you? Do you actually like this? How are things feeling in reality? And in that kind of like, we're looking at these things close up, not from our kind of distant, I don't know, idealized view. I know idealization is not necessarily a Venusian word, but I do think in this instance it is, or
especially if it's squaring out Jupiter. I mean, I think that's a very idealistic
and Uranus
transit.
Yes.
Yeah, totally. I didn't even think of that.
And we're gonna get it early with Uranus because we'll get into the stats of these degrees, but yeah, Uranus will be like our first go, and then we'll get in more Jupiter territory, and then of course we'll circle back to both those guys.
And one thing I think we should say about Venus retrogrades in general is that it's kind of, and I think this might be true for all retrogrades, but I'm not sure, but it's this kind of passing over that happens 3 times. And so it is, it's going direct, it's coming back, and then it's going direct again past that same thing. And so I think sometimes when we experience transits, especially these inner planets move very quickly. So sometimes we experience it once and we go like, okay, got it. But this is going to be a little bit more drawn out. And so whatever it is that comes up for you, and I know we talk about like, doing hair or makeup stuff, or like, especially in Leo, I think it's very presentational. So it's kind of that thing of like, oh, like I keep cutting bangs and like I keep coming back to getting them trimmed and they're just not like whatever it is. So it's that having that occur over like a longer period of time rather than just being like, oops, cut bangs, didn't like it, moved on kind of thing. It's like, oh, we're going to try it a few times. I'm going to like work on my bangs. I'm going to do this, whatever. And then it's like, maybe you figure out they're not for you. Maybe you end up keeping them forever,
So
I think I'm growing out mine.
Okay. They look long.
I know they look good.
I know I'm super long right now. I'm such a baby banger at my core, but
I think a good transition one too is to try a little bit of a curtain,
Yeah. Just you have like such good volume. It'll totally work. I mean, anything would look good on you, darling.
You guys, I've been working on my volume, so thank you so much for.
Oh my god! That. Well, it's working.
Been sleeping with claws in, like on the roots. Like,
oh, nice.
That's a great idea.
I literally bought a bump it. Should I start wearing it during Venus retrograde?
I mean,
why not? A light. That's a safe experiment,
I'm in the camp of experiment. I'm not in the camp of make permanent changes, but I do think this is a time where we're very inward, and I do like I think Stevie said on a past episode, this is a time where you might not have an accurate view of yourself. So, but as long as you're open-minded and like mentally stable about the changes you're making, I think it is a good time to experiment, because I do think there's something about trying out a thing and being like, oh, I did that because I don't like this part of my body, or I don't like this. I'm like uncomfortable with my like double chin. So I've been wearing more bronzer under there or whatever it is. But like, it's something that then you have to analyze, like, am I going to stay hating this thing about myself forever? Am I going to stay wearing bronzer on this thing because I don't like it forever? Or what can I do to change this thing or change my perspective on it? And I think this is a good time to kind of, meditate on those ideas.
Yeah,
also, Lisa, I don't think we have mentally stable listeners, so I don't know if that applies to,
sorry.
So everybody put the scissors and die down.
I'm now going to definitely use this meme or like movie scene from, if you remember Party Monster from back in the day, there's like when they're on the like Jerry Springer talk show and it's like I can't remember what the context was, but now I have the quote. It's like, it doesn't matter what you look like. If you have a hunchback, just throw a little glitter on it, honey, and go dancing.
Yes.
And it's like, hey, I mean, yes. Right?
Absolutely. No, I think that is perfect. So this Venus retrograde, we have been in the shadow period since June of the 19th. But this Venus technically stations retrograde on the 22nd of July at 28 degrees and 36 minutes of Leo. It will go direct on September 3rd at 12 degrees and 12 minutes of Leo, and we will leave the shadow on October 7th. And then Venus will leave Leo on October 8th. So I mean, we're in this for a while. So basically until October, we're going to be not retrograde, but we're going to be in this same vicinity, of Leo.
We also might be treading back through that same territory, even in the shadowy time.
Yes.
Also, Venus can only go retrograde in 5 signs. And so it is interesting because I think, we talk about breakups and the introspection, all these things. It's like, it's kind of jarring, but it's Aries, Gemini, Leo, Capricorn, and then of course Scorpio, but it can retrograde back into Libra. So there's kind of like a bonus 6.
And the only Venus sign too.
Yeah, that's the only Libra. One.
A little taste of Libra sometimes. And
I think it's interesting because I think we can kind of, I think these signs, they do speak to certain aspects of the Venus retrograde, but it does feel like they're not the ones you would like guess. You know what I mean? If you're like, oh, Venus-y things, like you wouldn't probably guess Aries or, maybe a little bit of Scorpio and maybe but I don't know. I feel like Capricorn is more regimented. Like I feel like they're all a little bit kind of outside of the realm of Venus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, they are where they're technically like diminished, but in traditional terms.
It's like it's like we're gonna stay here a little bit longer because this is a challenge.
Yeah.
And so it's like this is something we have to work through, where it's like it's coming through Taurus, it's blazing past,
Yeah. Where it's like, nah, I love it here. don't make me leave.
Yeah. And we only get a Venus retrograde every 18 months. So it's not like this isn't rare, but I do think, Venus and Mars retrogrades, as being more aware of the planets, doing the podcast and deeper diving astrology, those are like just so loud, like just so much more feeling it. I think, of course, Mercury retrogrades, which we will have one during this Venus retrograde as well, August 23rd through September 14th in Virgo. In Virgo's Mercury in its home sign, but we have so many a year. I do think the Venus and Mars are really necessary good check-ins, and I think even in those signs of Capricorn, Aries, Gemini, Leo, Scorpio with a touch of Libra, I think there is so like, well, what are you building with Capricorn? Where are you standing up for yourself? Maybe with Aries, where are you connecting with others with Gemini? I think just thinking of whatever signs it is and those lessons they're here to teach. And with Leo, I mean, like Leo's just, I just love Leo in terms of like, who am I? I think it can also lean with that with Aries as well. But it seems like a good, after these few years we've been in our last Venus retrograde was in Capricorn in 2021 or something. I can't remember right now. And I probably should have wrote that down. But a necessary check-in with what the fuck is happening in your life.
The last time it was in Leo was in 2015 too. The retrograde,
yeah.
So to think back if there's anything in your life that is being echoed now, not necessarily the same things, although it can be. Again, on the Astrology podcast, they had a lot of great examples of people getting engaged, getting divorced in cycles and things like that. And peace treaties and stuff too, not just to talk about relationships, because we want to also expand the parameters of Venus to include all of this kind of stuff. But yeah, it's super interesting.
I think we'll see. Oh, sorry. Stats. Whatever you were going to say, but I think we'll also see a lot of which we're still waiting as we record this with SAG striking. I think we're going to get a lot of information during this time, and it'd be interesting to see if it ends up wrapping up maybe when Venus retrograde wraps up, but TBD. We'll find out.
We'll see. There's a lot of things that could be negotiated, that could be all sorts of stuff that can come up, and we'll find out what it's going to be. Some major transits during this Venus retrograde. The first one that I have is a Mercury Venus conjunction on the 27th at 28 degrees, which I think is a fun like kickoff of, stating a mission statement for this retrograde period, or expressing how we are conceiving of ourselves at this time, and seeing kind of how that changes, because as we said, these transits are going to happen as we station retrograde, as we go direct, back and forth over those points. We have that Venus Uranus square on August 9th at 22 degrees and 55 minutes of Leo and Taurus respectively. So I think experimentation, like you said, Lisa, is actually good in this realm. And I think that you're going to be getting information back from those experimentations. I think it's just a matter of how much we internalize those and how much we then use those to create our sense of self, versus, hey, I've always wanted to try this. I know this is a time when I'm going to get the same way that we talk about when they do kind of like bug fixes or new releases during Mercury retrograde, because you're going to get all of the things that could go wrong. Yeah. Like, you're going to see how you feel about something when you aren't necessarily, again, in a kind of idealized version of your life, I think.
I also think in a talking about experimenting and stuff, I know that Venus is not like in its quote power, like during retrograde. It's kind of, all planets get a little like dampened, so to speak, when they go retrograde. So I think that sometimes that turns people off from doing their spiritual work or their manifesting stuff. And I don't think you need to back away from any of that. I just think that the focus needs to be a little bit more internal for it to really like click for you, because I think Venus can be kind of an external aesthetic, like artsy, all of those kind of things sign. And taking it to more of an internal thing and defining what I need, defining my values, defining my boundaries, and having that kind of spiritual manifestation, magic, whatever you do. I think those kind of things are going to lend themselves easier. So when you see these transits coming up, don't think like, oh, well, I can't do anything. I can't like do my thing on that day. No, you can. And if it's something you're struggling with about like an external thing, let's say like for me, it's always like a work thing, then it's like, what can I do in my life to change that? And rather than saying like what I need from them or what I want to get more money, or I need this or whatever from them, it's like, what do I need to do for myself to make this work for me? And being able to define some of those things is going to help you once the planet moves forward.
Yeah, it feels very, I don't think Leo Venus needs to be a full stop on life, which it should never be. I think with astrology, of course, like eclipses can be dicey in terms of like calling in power, whatever. But it feels very like big rebranding time. I think also the squaring off with the Taurus placements. I mean, aren't we all feeling the financial squeeze of 2023? It is not fun outside. So maybe that is like, how much does furthering my education cost? How long would it take me to get done? Maybe it is starting to take the strategy of these investments. I think it's really good in that eternal sense of like, okay, well, by this time next year, what do I like, actually putting like the pen to paper of like the goals or what you want to expect out of it. I think it's like a great time for that. And I think, I'm already, working in entertainment. Like I'm seeing like, what do you guys do when things are slow? And it's like, I started substitute teaching, or I'm doing this, or like, I'm actually went back to school, and like, I'm not, not to be a millennial where like grad school is the answer for everyone. But I do think sometimes it's like, okay, well, how am I going to take this further? Or like, how do I make this goal bigger? Or if you did just end up at the goal, cool. Like, are we maintaining? Are we like, what things do we like? What do we don't? I think it has to be rebranding in a way to conform though. Like, I think it's just becoming a more rebrand of who you are.
I used to bite my nails.
No more pumping out content for like, who cares? What I mean? Like, it feels like that. It's like, can we all retire? We can all retire this.
Take a break.
Yeah.
I used to bite my nails so bad, and I quit during Venus retrograde in Gemini, and it was like a very like intentional thing, but it was, and at the time not even realizing it was like hands, you know, but I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And it's such a bad, like, I can't stop doing it. I'm in my 20s. I can't figure this out. And like, that was just the time that I decided, like, this is what I'm focusing on more than anything else. And so, and like, obviously, like going to get a manicure every week, because that was the way that helped me not do it or whatever, which costs money and, you know, whatever. But I do think, like, if there is something you've been meaning to do, it's okay to start. This isn't a time that you have to, like, just because it's a retrograde. I know it's like, you know, word of rees and all those things. It doesn't mean you have to stop everything.
I think it's
maybe
very
it's not
much
the launch, but you can like get it ready, you know?
Yeah. I think it also can be a going back to a thing that you have started in the previous thing, or going back to something that you used to be into, something
tried so many times to stop.
Yes, that you've tried to stop, or that you've tried to make work or whatever. I think, again, even with this is a silly not silly, let's say a surface level example, but even with the idea of like experimenting with a bang or something like that, where it would be like, no, I'm going to commit to cutting these bangs, and I'm going to commit to learning how to style them every day so I can look the way that I want them to look, because I go to the hair salon and I go, I want this thing. And then I go home and it doesn't look like that at home. So I'm going to like learn the thing or whatever, something where you just are committing to the earth process of your values, I think. But definitely coming back to things that have been of interest to you in the past that made you feel like where you are. I think that those are worth pursuing. And I think even like I know it is a very like millennial trope to be like grad school, but I think that there is a commitment and a follow and a like getting into a deeper knowing of something that then lets you go, oh, I could specialize in something. I could do something that is me. That's my, like, this is an interest that I am focused in. Grad school to me is very like retrograde in that thing, because it's specialized and it is a focus. It's not general, I'm learning everything. It's going like, I really want to make this my thing. And I think that that's very well suited for, not saying like go back to grad school, everybody, but I think that having that mentality,
it could be a workshop, like or a training, or just,
you know, like you said, Lisa, of like, oh, I'm going to focus on this thing right now. This is the thing that's most important, where it's like, yeah, let's specialize. Let's get in on a thing. And that doesn't mean it's going to work. Like you said, it's not a launch because we're like, here, we're starting this, whatever. It's about like really seeing it through when it maybe isn't as easy.
And you learn something, and now I know when I bite my nails, like I'm like, oh, something's wrong. Yeah. Because like you care about this thing and you're ignoring it or whatever, you know?
Yeah. Last Capricorn Venus time, I got super into organizing retrograde time, like organizing, bullet journaling. Like I was on my time management game, very appropriate with Cap, where I needed the break and I needed the reset. And just recently in the shadow period of this Leo Venus retrograde, I like just had this, you know, those ideas that just live in your head forever. I was like, wait, I need to write these down. So it's like things I've always wanted to do, where it's like make a song. Like, oh, I've had this idea for this piece of clothing I've always wanted to make, not to like sell, and maybe, you know, if it's cute, maybe, but just those things where like I've always had that idea for this thing. Like I want to see them, and like, can I make the space to do one of these things? I mean, Leo too is so much play and fun and games and the good stuff, you know, like where, oh, I've always had this idea for this script. Like, well, you might maybe like take a week and do it, you know, like take that time and invest in it.
We have a Sun Venus conjunction on the 13th of August, which again, I think a lot of these transits, they are squares, but we also have some like lovely stuff. I feel like Venus is actually not particularly difficultly aspected during this retrograde. So I do think it is very much an internal, like,
well, if you're square freaks like us, we're like, woo, like,
well, I mean, even this like Venus Jupiter square is nice. Or I mean, not necessarily, because we've seen some, you know, laws enacted and things like that too. But I think it also can be like expanding, going going bigger, doing something further than you thought you wanted to, or having your mind changed about things, your kind of philosophies and things like that. We have a Venus trine to Chiron on the 14th of August, which I think too is like healing to me. It could also be, you know, a self-loathing, self-destructive kind of day, because we're getting that trine to Chiron in Aries. But I also think that could be a day when we, like, I don't know, get over something, really push
learn
through
something about it.
Or at the very least kind of come to terms with, that's like a wound. I have a real insecurity about that. That's something there. So we're not Jonah Hilling and hurting other people. We're going, that's something that really hurts me, and I need to be aware of that, so I'm not projecting that out in these ways, or so I can be tender to that and be mindful of myself.
Can you imagine Jonah's reps being like, fuck, we can't even say that he's going to go to therapy and work on himself, because the whole thing is rooted in going to therapy and working on yourself. Not that means you still can't, right?
Yeah,
but I'm thinking of the PR spin,
of course.
You know, he'll either get sober or try stand up next.
Orgomaga. I said Orgomaga. Like, I could see
it could be that.
Like a total flip. Anyways, we'll see. And finally, we have the Venus square to Jupiter on the 22nd of August at 15 degrees and 18 minutes of Leo and Taurus, respectively. Those are our retrograde transits. We have post stationing direct, which again happens September 3rd at 12 degrees and 12 minutes of Leo. We will have another Venus square to Jupiter on the 16th of September at 15 degrees and 19 minutes of Leo and Taurus, respectively. We will have another trine to Chiron, which I love as this kind of like reiterating this pattern of healing and transformation.
Well, we're having this square, and then we're healing, and then we're having, you know, it's interesting.
Yeah, so that's on the 23rd at 18 degrees and 29 minutes of Leo and Aries, respectively. And then we have another closing Venus-Uranus square on the 29th of September, which coincides with the full moon in Aries, which I think also is just kind of nice. It's not exactly there, but it is on the same day. So we are having another kind of like release there. We're in a Venus season at this time too, and we've gone through Leo season, we've gone through Virgo season, we're into Libra season, and we're kind of emerging with this Venus-Uranus square at 22 degrees of Leo and Taurus, respectively, on the 29th. And that wraps up our Venus retrograde.
Woo. And also keep an eye on the Leo parts of your chart, your Leo house, which Venus ruled houses are maybe getting activated. You don't really need to do anything differently. Again, I do think like extreme aesthetic or financial changes, investments, etc. You know, if you can move, why not? That's just the weather, but life goes on, things happen, it's fine. But yeah.
And remember, the easy math astrology is that if you have something in a fixed sign, it's going to be square opposite. And if you have something in a fire sign, it's going to be trining. So that's like the easy, quick math. If you're like, oh, well, I'm a fire sun, I'm going to be having like a trine at, you know, some point. So if you have a fixed sun, like in Stevie, you're going to have a square.
Yeah. And if you're traveling during peak summer time in this Venus retrograde and Mercury retrograde, just, you know, double check your shit. That's it. You know, it's a quadruple checks. I mean, it's also interesting. Biden's whole campaign, which I wish he would maybe focus on a few other things, is very like hidden fees kind of going away. Like he's like, I'm going to show you how much concert tickets cost. It's like, oh, I mean, that's good. Like we should, but maybe just wipe away student loans would be, I would vote for that.
He tried, I think.
I know. They did try.
They did attempt it, but the stalemate we live in as this country, again,
I don't know. There is something to me about a hidden fee, though, that could be a student loan gateway. Maybe this is being overly optimistic and too saggy about it, but there is like
we
need more sag and
I'm like, give me the optimism.
Well, when you see the things that you are being taken advantage of and where things are being overplayed, everyone thinks that things are legal and fair and this is how much it costs and whatever, when it's like, oh, okay, well, if we're taking out this sort of thing, I think it does open people's minds to the idea that they are not being told what what all things are, you know?
Yeah.
I know I didn't say a lot of nouns in there. So.
That's what politicians do though. You know, you gave us the right speech right there. Yes. I feel, well, that's the same thing with the strike, the state of our country. It's like, it's things are bad, but like, we know what has to happen, you know, like we know that we need us all to like live in prosperity and not have to worry about how much healthcare costs or what our student loans or whatever. I mean, I don't know, like maybe there's something that comes back of like, if you didn't make enough money to X, like, I don't know, maybe some new math, the math will math, but
One, if people can't afford to be distracted about how bad their lives are, then that also is like a problem. I mean, it's one that I think leads to people fixing stuff too, but also I think it leads to you know, when you can't go and forget about a thing, that's not a happy working class either.
Yeah, totally. So
I don't think, you know, we'll see. I mean, I think in my personal like it's like mantra for everything is just what all of this is meant to be, keeping you truer to yourself, closer to yourself, more in line with what it is that you, not in a toxic individual way, in a way that allows you to, again, not hurt people, not resent people, not be angry, be jealous, be whatever. When you're doing what you want to do, then you are less likely to be angry at other people for doing the same thing, because you're doing what who cares? So I think being clear about what's actually important to you, where do you want to spend your stuff? Where do you want to spend your time? Where do you want to spend your energy, your efforts? What makes you feel like you? That's what all of this is here to teach us, so we can go forward and be better to ourselves and other people.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Let's do it. Happy Venus retrograde, y'all.
Yes. Yeah. We'll see you on the other side.
Yeah. Get those scissors back in your hand. It's fine.
Oh my God.
We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.